We, the reconnaissance division of the Galactic Armies, are trained to observe, to dissect, to catalog. It is our noble burden to study primitive species before they are trampled beneath the iron discipline of our greater war machine. I volunteered for Earth, though in truth, the assignment was hardly a challenge. Earth is a small, blue sphere in a forgettable sector, its inhabitants ruled by chemical impulses and bizarre cultural rituals. I had expected monotony, perhaps some amusement. I had not expected, well, I will restrain myself. One must tell a story properly, even if one is the unfortunate witness to its lessons. Our analysts first identified Earth as a planet distracted by itself. The signals that leak into space speak not of coordination or military readiness, but of arguments about sports, endless contests involving who can sing more loudly, and a near-sacred devotion to something called reality television. I confess, the first time I accessed a transmission, I believed it to be a sophisticated psychological weapon designed to dull the senses. But no, it is entertainment. Entire civilizations across this planet spend hours watching their own kind compete for mating privileges while living inside painted boxes. We concluded quickly, these beings are unserious. And yet, paradoxes abound. Earthlings developed rocketry, fission weapons, digital networks. They even placed small metallic husks into orbit that scream continuously about weather patterns and celebrity scandals. Their vehicles still drink a substance called gasoline, a flammable liquid they set on fire inside metal boxes while sitting on top of them. And they smile while doing this. I assure you, my initial report was scathing. A species addicted to combustion and cheeseburgers could hardly withstand the precision of the Galactic Armies. We expected this campaign to be a formality. So when I received the directive, observe a specimen, test its responses, confirm weakness, I accepted with satisfaction. My squad assembled within the shadow of an orbital carrier and descended through the night atmosphere, cloaked in resonance shields. Earth's sky was unusually clear. Below, rivers coiled like silver veins, forests stretched across hills dressed in orange foliage. A scenic ruin. Our scanners identified a lone human near the water's edge. He sat beside a small fire, primitive light and warmth, his belongings scattered in neat order. He wore cloth camouflage, his face unshaven, his posture relaxed. A hunter, perhaps, or a camper. Nothing remarkable. Target isolated, I announced. My soldiers spread in formation, their weapons humming quietly. The human did not stir as we activated the paralysis beam. He simply leaned back against a rock, arms loose at his sides, and allowed the glow to settle across him. His eyes closed. For a fleeting moment, I suspected he had died of shock, but the readings confirmed steady cardiac rhythm. He was merely asleep. Too easy. Entire civilizations had fought and begged and clawed when we took them. This one had surrendered before the contest began. It was almost disappointing. We lifted him aboard without difficulty. He was of average height and build for his species, wrapped in dull earth tones. His equipment included a knife, rope, and a small box filled with metal cylinders. My soldiers chuckled at the primitive tools. One asked if this was the apex of Earth's warriors. I admit I laughed as well. Humanity's greatest champion, armed with rope and tin beans. It was almost poetic. During ascent, I studied him more closely. His face was marked by sun exposure and faint scars. His hands bore calluses, the kind earned through weapons practice or labor. Yet he breathed steadily, lips pressed in a faint, unreadable line. Most captives twitch or grimace in paralysis. This one appeared calm. At the time, I dismissed it as ignorance, the bliss of not understanding what awaited him. In retrospect, I wonder if it was patience. My soldiers grew lax, treating him as cargo rather than subject. They prodded his belongings, mocked the faded fabric of his garments. One discovered a small packet labeled microwave burrito and asked what sort of organism it might be. I explained, with scholarly disdain, that humans ingest these substances voluntarily. They consume them, then boast about it. My soldiers recoiled as if I had described poison. Perhaps it is poison, though they seem remarkably resistant. We secured him in the examination chamber. The paralysis field was stable. My report dictated he would remain unconscious for 6 planetary hours before initial testing. We would measure neural responses, musculoskeletal strength, resistance to interrogation. A dull schedule, but essential for the catalogs. I ordered the team to prepare instruments, to align the scanners, to ensure the subject could not wake prematurely. I was meticulous as always. Our reputation depends on precision. Still, I allowed myself a moment of indulgence. I addressed my log recorder, dictating in full. Specimen extraction successful. Human male, mid-30s. Displays no resistance. No observable signs of advanced cognition beyond baseline. Subject classification, docile. I recall emphasizing that word, relishing it. Docile. I imagined the review board nodding at my efficiency. Another primitive consigned to the record. Another triumph of order over chaos. The ship settled into silent orbit. Earth dwindled below, clouds crawling slowly across its oceans. I watched through the viewport and mused upon their fragility. A species that invents symbols called emojis to replace spoken words cannot hope to contend with us. They scatter their attention upon trivial amusements. Tiny glowing rectangles they hold closer than family. They invent myths about creatures named superheroes, while their real defenders rot in bureaucracy. They cannot possibly pose a threat. Satisfied, I returned to the chamber. The subject lay motionless beneath the glow of containment fields, eyes closed, chest rising evenly. My soldiers ignored him, discussing which sectors of the planet held the tastiest livestock. I listened only briefly. The silence of the human troubled me, though I did not admit it aloud. It was not natural. Even in stasis, one expects some twitch, some involuntary shiver. Instead, he resembled a hunter waiting for prey. I chastised myself for the thought. Primitive instincts. Nothing more. Yet as I turned to depart, his eyes opened. Slowly, calmly. He did not thrash against the field or gasp in terror. He simply looked at me. I froze mid-step. His gaze was steady, unblinking, utterly without fear. It was the kind of gaze one expects not from prey, but from predator. And then, though every nerve in his body was trapped in paralysis, his mouth curved, just slightly, into a smile. His smile lingered in the glow of the paralysis field, small yet unnerving. My soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, their laughter dissolving into silence. I reminded them that premature awakenings sometimes occurred, electrical misalignments, cellular anomalies, nothing more. Protocol demanded composure. Yet as I stepped closer, his eyes followed me, deliberate and sharp. It was not the dazed confusion of a creature dragged from its den. It was assessment. Containment remains active, I announced, more to reassure myself and my squad. The field's readings pulsed steadily. Muscular contractions were impossible, yet I felt as though he could move if he wished. My appendages twitched, and I forced them still. He was just a human, I reminded myself. A biped who stored food in cylindrical cans and worshipped glowing screens. Nothing more. Then he spoke. His voice was low, calm, threaded with a dry amusement. "Nice ship," he said. "Could use better ventilation." The words carried no tremor of fear. My soldiers recoiled as though he had cursed. Paralysis suppresses vocal cords, yet here he was, conversing. Impossible, and yet undeniably real. I attempted to reclaim authority. "Silence. You are under containment." My voice rang hollow against the chamber walls. The human's smile widened a fraction. He tilted his head within the beam, eyes narrowing in a gesture I later learned signaled mischief. "You're the leader," he said, gaze fixed on me. "The one in charge. You, over there, your security. And you," his eyes shifted toward my technician, science type. "Nervous with your hands." "That about right." My technician stammered, his digits fumbling over instruments. No report had prepared us for this. No primitive should identify command roles so effortlessly. I masked my unease. "You are guessing," I insisted. But the certainty in his tone lingered. He ignored me, continuing his dissection. Funny thing about abductions. Usually the subject screams, begs, maybe faints. Me? I like to observe. Been awake since you pulled me off the riverbank. Nice descent profile. By the way, smooth burn, a little resonance leakage at the stern. You should fix that. His words dripped casual, conversational. Yet each syllable revealed knowledge no human should possess. My soldiers shifted, the chamber suddenly suffocating. I barked at them to maintain discipline, though my own pulse betrayed me. You lie. You could not have remained conscious during transit. He met my gaze without blinking. Guess you'll have to take my word for it. Then he chuckled softly. Don't worry. I've had worse rides. Ever flown coach? The term meant nothing to us. Yet the derision in his tone was clear. I sought to reassert the hierarchy. You're understudy. You will answer when asked, not before. Sure, he said, still smiling. Ask away. He sounded like a teacher indulging a child. The reversal stung. I probe him with questions, standard protocol. Name, age, occupation. He answered with ease, though never directly. When asked his profession, he paused, then replied, I've done a little of everything. Hunting, watching, waiting. I suppose you could say I'm insecurity. His tone suggested layers beneath the word, but he offered no clarification. Instead, he glanced at the ceiling and added, nice camera placement, by the way. Wide angle, low distortion. Except the one behind you. It's smudged. Might want to clean it. He had not once turned his head toward the lens, yet he described it perfectly. A chill settled over the chamber. My soldiers whispered nervously. I silenced them, but inside I felt the same unease. How could he sense the unseen? He spoke again, softer now, as if confiding. You think I'm afraid? That's your mistake. Fear burns too much energy. I prefer patience. His eyes lingered on me, sharp as glass. You're not the first to underestimate me. Won't be the last. I bristled. You are nothing more than a specimen, a fragment of a doomed species. The words rang with authority, but they tasted of desperation. He only laughed, a quiet, steady sound, as if he had heard this before. You know, he said, back home we have this running joke about someone called Florida Man. He does the impossible, fights alligators, wrestles hurricanes, bathes with fireworks. You'd think he was fiction, but the joke is he's real, and he's everywhere. His smile grew. You thought Florida Man was an isolated case. He is not. My technician frowned, whispering into my receiver. What is Florida Man? I silenced him sharply. Still, the phrase gnawed at me. His words seemed nonsensical, yet carried a weight I could not dismiss. I redirected to testing protocols, commanding my crew to initiate neural scans. The beam activated, bathing his skull in violet light. Patterns formed across the monitors. And then, distortion. Unfamiliar surges, peaks beyond expectation. My scientist muttered nervously. His neural pathways are irregular, more active than baseline. I demanded clarity. The readings spiked again, then stabilized at levels comparable not to primitives, but to advanced strategists within our own fleet. Impossible. The human chuckled, as though amused by our confusion. Neat little toy you've got there. Reads a brain, right? Don't suppose it works both ways. His eyes flicked to the monitor, then back to me. Because if it does, you should know I've already mapped your power cycles. A bead of cold sweat, if such a metaphor applies to my kind, slid through me. My soldier stiffened. He cannot, I said firmly, though the conviction in my voice faltered. Our systems are beyond his comprehension. He leaned slightly within the paralysis field, eyes narrowing. You sure about that? For the first time, I found no words. Silence pressed heavy in the chamber. The human let it stretch before speaking again, softer, almost conspiratorial. You asked my occupation. Truth is, I used to serve. Spent years in places most of my own kind don't even admit exist. We learned to study the unseen, to wait, to act only when the enemy blinked. You call it primitive. We call it patience. Some call it being a sniper. The word was unfamiliar, but its weight was undeniable. My soldiers exchanged fearful glances. I struggled to maintain composure, but my appendages betrayed the tremor of unease. Still, I clung to authority. You were paralyzed. You can do nothing. He smiled again. This time the smile was thinner, sharper. Maybe, but I already did what I needed to. His gaze drifted toward the ceiling, almost absent. Messages sent. The words echoed in the chamber, simple yet catastrophic. My soldiers erupted in panic, demanding clarification. I shouted for silence, though my own voice cracked. What message? To whom? He closed his eyes, expression serene. To whoever's listening. And then he laughed softly, as though the joke was ours, not his. The chamber thickened with unease after his words, as though the air itself had grown heavier. A message sent, ridiculous, surely. The paralysis field was intact, our comms encrypted, our systems isolated from primitive interference. Yet his calm certainty gnawed at me like acid against steel. My soldiers looked to me for reassurance, their eyes wide, appendages trembling. I forced my posture tall, my voice steady, though every syllable weighed more than it should. He lies. It is a tactic of intimidation, nothing more. Humans are storytellers. They invent myths to make themselves feel larger than they are. But even as I spoke, the monitors glowed with strange patterns, his neural activity spiking into regions no baseline human brain should ever touch. My scientists tried to adjust calibrations, mumbling excuses about interference, but I could read the fear on his face. The human opened one eye, glanced lazily at the display, and said, "Careful with that dial. Last time someone turned it too far, you fried the whole unit." My scientist recoiled, hand frozen mid-motion. The human smirked. "Relax. Just kidding." Mostly, the arrogance in his tone stung me. And yet beneath it lay something worse. Knowledge. He spoke not as the prey of an interstellar predator, but as a man who had already walked these halls in his mind. My instincts screamed that we were being studied, dissected, even as we believed ourselves to be the disassemblers. It was intolerable. I stepped closer to him, narrowing my gaze. "You will answer directly. How could you possibly interfere with our systems? You have no access, no interface." He smiled again, maddeningly calm. "Interfaces are funny things. You think of them as machines. I think of them as patterns. All it takes is time to watch how they repeat." He tilted his head slightly, eyes still locked on mine. "And I've had plenty of time." I scoffed, though the sound came brittle. "You exaggerate your own cleverness." He shrugged within the paralysis beam. "That's what they said about duct tape too, until it fixed everything. Spaceships, engines, marriages. You name it." My soldiers exchanged confused glances, whispering the unfamiliar word. I waved them silent, yet I could not ignore the way his humor unsettled them. They expected terror, pleas, perhaps anger. Instead, they were confronted by a man who laughed while bound. His calm eroded our authority more swiftly than resistance ever could. He opened both eyes now, staring into the ceiling as though gazing beyond the metal shell of our ship. "You want to know the funny part? You think I'm exceptional. That's your mistake. I'm not. There are thousands like me. Millions, if you count the ones who don't even carry rifles. Teachers, engineers, kids who grew up learning to spot patterns in video games or solve problems on the fly because the world never gave them stability. You studied our broadcasts, right? Then you know we thrive in chaos. We make memes out of disaster. We laugh at fear." He chuckled, shaking his head slightly. "Florida Man is just the tip of the iceberg." My crew looked at one another nervously, baffled by his ramblings, but I understood the underlying warning. He claimed not to be singular, but representative. If true, our intelligence had been catastrophically flawed. Earth was not populated by docile primitives, but by latent predators masked in banality. I forced the thought aside. "You are attempting psychological manipulation. Your words mean nothing." He tilted his head back toward me, his expression suddenly devoid of humor. "If they mean nothing, why are you sweating?" My throat tightened, though my physiology does not sweat as his kind does. Still, the implication burned. He was watching not only our systems, but us, observing, cataloging, exploiting the smallest tremors in voice and stance. He was reversing the experiment. I ordered my scientists to increase scan intensity. The beam flared brighter, shadows stretching across the walls. Data poured in, neural lattices branching with abnormal density, cortical responses firing as though rehearsed for this very moment. My scientist's voice quivered. He processes faster than baseline by orders we cannot quantify. I snarled for him to continue, but the truth was already plain. The human's mind was not merely surviving the scan. It was using it. He chuckled again, a low sound that curdled the air. Feels like a tickle. Funny thing, you use beams to read the brain. But a brain isn't just passive, is it? Sometimes it reads back. His eyes glimmered in the violet light. And now I know where you keep the keys. Panic fluttered in my chest. I barked at my soldiers to ready restraints, though he was already restrained. The contradiction tasted of desperation. He smirked knowingly. You feel it, don't you? The loss of control, the quiet slipping. He paused, then added almost kindly, don't take it personally. Everyone underestimates the quiet ones. I demanded answers. Who are you? What training produced this? What organization? He considered, then said with deliberate casualness. Once upon a time, they called me military. These days I just test things. Systems, defenses, people. I find cracks. His eyes sharpened, voice dropping. And you, friend, are full of cracks. The chamber pulsed with silence, my soldiers staring as though he had already escaped. My authority drained by the second. I tried again to anchor us. You cannot act. You cannot move. He leaned into the words, smiling thinly. I don't need to move. I only need to think. His gaze flicked to the flickering lights above. And I've been thinking a lot. Almost as if in response, the overhead lamps dimmed, then flared, then dimmed again. My soldiers gasped. Systems rarely falter on our vessels. To falter now, at this moment, was unthinkable. I barked orders for diagnostics. Panels scrambled with static, cleared, then scrambled again. My crew moved frantically. The human merely closed his eyes, serene. See? Told you. Message sent. I felt my composure splinter. My voice cracked despite my effort to steady it. What message? To what end? He opened his eyes slowly, locking on mine with chilling calm. To let them know you're here. That's all it takes. He paused, then added softly, and to let you know you're not as invisible as you think. The chamber's hum grew uneven, consoles flickering, as though the ship itself trembled beneath his gaze. I turned to my crew, demanding restoration, demanding order, yet their faces betrayed the same fear gnawing at me. We had taken a man to dissect. Instead, he had dissected us. And as the lights guttered again, I realized the central conflict was no longer between empire and primitive. It was between arrogance and patience, between hunters and the one we mistook for prey. The lights faltered again, dipping the chamber in a shadow before flaring back with sterile brilliance. My soldiers scrambled across consoles, their voices sharp, overlapping, panicked. None dared look at me for guidance anymore. Their eyes betrayed the same question echoing in my own mind. How? How had one human, bound and paralyzed, turned the heart of our vessel into trembling chaos? The human did not flinch. He lay calmly within the field, as though reclining on a couch at home, unbothered by the storm he had unleashed. His voice, quiet but steady, sliced through the rising panic. Funny thing about systems. You think they're built to control. But every system has a flaw. Every lock has a weak hinge. All I needed was your scanner to show me where to push. My scientist muttered frantically, recalibrating instruments, but his words were broken fragments. Feedback loop, resonance inversion, not possible. He collapsed into silence when the human chuckled softly. Not only possible, he said, but inevitable. You gave me the map. I just followed it. I slammed my palm against the console, demanding restoration, but the displays bled into static. Doors hissed and sealed on their own. A klaxon wailed briefly, then died. The ship was no longer ours. It pulsed with a new rhythm, one that seemed to answer to him. I rounded on him, my authority eroding into fury. You dare to sabotage a warship of the Galactic Armies? You consign yourself and your entire species to annihilation. His eyes opened, glinting like steel beneath the flickering lamps. You think this is about me? That's your mistake. I'm just a messenger. Messenger. The word struck harder than a weapon. My soldiers froze, the chamber echoing with its weight. He continued, voice patient, steady, surgical. You saw weakness where there was deception. You thought Earth was blind, but we were watching. Always watching. Satellites cloaked in orbit, listening to the stars. Monitors buried deep underground, scanning the void. You thought we were asleep while you circled above. But sleep is just another form of waiting. I felt my throat constrict. No intelligence report had mentioned such defenses. No analyst had suggested this level of subterfuge. And yet, as he spoke, his words carried the unshakable cadence of truth. He tilted his head, that infuriating half-smile returning. You ever hear of Chuck Norris? Silence. None of us dared respond. He nodded as though satisfied. Good. Keep it that way. The name hung in the air, a meaningless syllable to us, yet weighted with menace by his delivery. My soldiers whispered uneasily. He leaned back slightly, voice now almost conversational. Earth has a habit of hiding strength in plain sight. Farmers who used to be soldiers. Engineers who design games that are really training exercises. Kids who build drones out of scrap. You call us primitive because you don't understand how improvisation works. His smile sharpened. You ever seen what we can do with duct tape? One of my soldiers whimpered. I silenced him with a glare, but the seed had been planted. This human was not merely explaining himself. He was weaving a mythology of resilience, of cunning. And worse, I could feel myself believing it. The ship shuddered suddenly, a deep groan reverberating through the hull. Consoles flickered out completely, leaving us in semi-darkness. Emergency power thrummed weakly. My scientist shouted. Central core unresponsive. Panic spread like infection. The human spoke above the din, calm as ever. I told you. Message sent. Your presence isn't a secret anymore. Earth knows, and Earth doesn't forgive trespassers. I staggered closer, fury masking the fear clawing at my insides. You lie. Earth cannot repel us. We command fleets, weapons, armies beyond comprehension. His eyes locked onto mine, cold and unyielding. Armies don't matter if you never see the bullet. He let the silence hang, heavy and suffocating. Then he whispered, and I'm a sniper. The word cut deeper this time. Not just a profession, but a philosophy. Invisible until decisive. Patient until lethal. I realized then that his calm was not arrogance, but discipline. We had mistaken stillness for weakness, silence for submission. In truth, he had been aiming since the moment we took him. Alarms shrieked briefly, then died again. My soldiers huddled at their stations, useless. The ship felt like a tomb. I turned back to him, desperate for control, for logic, for anything to reassert order. What do you want? Speak plainly. His expression softened, almost pitying. It's not about what I want. It's about what you need to understand. You came here thinking we were prey. But predators don't announce themselves. They wait. They learn. And when the time comes, they act without warning. The chamber fell into silence. My own breath rasped in my ears. His words echoed, not just in the air, but in the crumbling edifice of my certainty. We had cataloged countless species, crushed resistance across galaxies, yet never had one man, unarmed and immobile, dismantled us with nothing but words and patience. He closed his eyes as though bored now, finished. You should go home. Tell your armies what you saw. If they're smart, they'll stay away. If they're not, well, you'll find out the hard way. The paralysis field shimmered uncertainly around him, destabilized by the ship's failing power. My soldiers whispered fearfully, asking if he would break free. I could not answer. My voice, once confident, now trembled with the admission clawing its way up my throat. We underestimated you. His eyes opened one last time, sharp as a rifle scope, cutting through every illusion I clung to. Everyone does. The ship groaned again, systems collapsing one by one. In the darkness that followed, only his calm breathing remained. And in that sound, I heard the death knell of certainty, the shattering of arrogance, the truth of what we had awakened. We came to break a species. Instead, we discovered one that had been waiting, patient as a sniper in tall grass, waiting for us to step into its sights.